All right, it is indeed a very, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's another Tuesday, the 23rd of May 2023, tarehe 23 mwezi wa 5 mwaka 2023. Natumai kwamba uko salama. It's the State of the Nation edition, the 23rd of May 2023. We want to apologize for coming in live late kwa sababu ya hitilafu ya kimitambo kidogo, lakini sisi yao. We are right here. Please, when you like, when you like, we get to know that you're watching us. And after, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. When you please like, when you like, we get to know that you're watching us. And after, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. Of course, this morning, as usual, whenever you see Jimmy in the house, you know it's about numbers. It's about money. It's about the state of the economy and what is going on and what is not going on as well, because there can only be two things happening. Either something is going on or something is not going on. So we're going to get to put that into perspective this morning. If you have any question as well, you can send it to us on the comment section. I'll be reading the comments, of course. We'll be looking who is up and who is set and ready to watch us this morning. Kama kawaida, though, lazima tuende mbele za Mungu tuombe. Alafu tukirudi basi na kuja kuona nani ameweza kuamka mapema. Let us know where you're watching us from this morning as well. But make sure that you also share the broadcast. All right. Mighty Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you. We glorify your name. Thank you for another opportunity to be alive. We thank you for this conversation. We thank you for the guest this morning. We thank you for every tackler. May you meet them at their point of individual needs. As we start off with us, don't you finish. Glory. Don't I shall come back to your name. For we pray, trusting and believing. Amen and amen. All right, asante sana. Lona Sima, good morning. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. Sheila Wanja na Kesa tuned in live from Nakuru sub-county. Good to see you guys from Nakuru as well. Good morning. Good morning to you. The guys on YouTube as well. Good morning. Hope you're doing well this morning as well. When you join in, when you like, you get to know that you're watching us. And please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. Our guest this morning needs no introduction. He's been here with us. He's been a great fan and the support of the tackle. Every time ukiona around hapa huwezi kosa kuona mkono yake mahali hapa. Jimmy has been with us since we started off, and he still sticks with us even as we try to grow bigger. He's still sticking in with us. Jimi Wanjigi was a presidential candidate in 2022 under Safina Party. Before that, of course, Jimmy is not a new name, but before 2017, Jimmy was a mystery. You could only hear the name, but you could not know the person. First 2017, of course, we got to see him, and he joined the race for the presidency with the top office in 2022 under Safina Party with a raft of proposals that he had given unto us. And of course, we know what happened with that. But we are here again. He has continued to keep the conversation going. The last time he was here, we were having a forensic audit of the debt situation in Kenya. And the numbers were not adding up. A single point that he was saying, these things are not adding up. This is the last time he was here in July, I think, 27th, 2022. But he's back again this morning, of course, to give us a perspective of the state of the economy and majorly the debt. And how exactly this country is going to get out of the hole that we seem to be deep on or to be deep in. So you're going to have that conversation this morning with Mheshimiwa Jimi Wanjigi. Good morning to you, sir.
Gerald, good morning. Good to be back. I hope you've had coffee.
Yeah, of course.
It's an early morning. I'm very anxious to be here again, and anxious to begin and dive into a good conversation.
You're looking very fresh.
I'm feeling very good.
You don't look like you were in a country that has that.
Very much, yeah. These days we don't move around too much. We have a country to care for.
Sure.
And it's important that we stick around and engage with people. So we're having a good time. I'm really glad to be back. You're right. The last time I was here was...
in July, I think.
July last year.
Yes.
That was quite some time ago. It's good to be back, and we'll always support you, Gerald. You're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are here. We are here anytime you need us.
I really appreciate, of course, you've been a great brother of the tackle.
You have to be.
You've been with us, you've held our hand, you've continued to encourage us and give us a reason to keep doing what we do. And we hope someday we're going to match up to what you think we can actually be.
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
So,
Amen to that.
Maybe we just look quickly at the newspaper headlines, because we'll pick anything that relates to the conversation that we're having this morning, depending on where it shows up in. You know, of course, Kenyan dailies and newspapers mostly carry political conversations. Hardly do they actually carry any substance in terms of the economy and any other conversation. But anyway, let's look at the newspaper headlines. If we get anything that we can pick on, of course, we look at that. Politics. Azimio leaders Raila Odinga, Martha Karua, and Kalonzo Musyoka attended the event. I'm no pushover. Uhuru tells Ruto, That was yesterday. I wanted to leave politics, quoting Uhuru Kenyatta, I wanted to leave politics and deal with other issues and opt to relinquish my position such as in such an NDC, but some people have decided to issue threats and use violence against us. Today, I want to tell them to look for someone else to intimidate, not Uhuru Kenyatta. Okay. Battle for Jubilee Soul, former president moves to stamp his authority amid onslaught by group allied to President William Ruto. But the cleanup faction, of course, that's on Jubilee still. MPs seek 2.5 billion for schools cooking gas project. Okay. 2.5 billion. The MP is asking for 2.5 billion kununua gas ya kupika shuleni. All right, the education leaders crisis at universities in terms of VCs cancel lapses. Sugar scam. Jirani and 7 others face stiff charges in toxic sugar case. Suspects released on shillings 400,000 Kenya shillings bail, each after denying charges of conspiracy to commit a crime. Okay, there's a story on sugar. Of course, I know you've picked on that. Taxation. Activists to protest over punitive taxes. At least 20 civil society groups have threatened to lead nationwide demos in 2 weeks' time to protest over punitive tax measures in the 2023.
That's an important headline. That one.
Well, that is the Daily Nation. Maybe you can just pick up on something.
What is the Business Daily?
On Business Daily, of course, we're heading there. On Business Daily, what is the story on Business Daily? I think Business Daily has something to do with, right. Business Daily, squeeze on home buyers as banks tighten terms. Lenders cut mortgages by a year. Increase interest on from 11.3% in 2021 to 12.3% in 2023.
There we go.
Yes, that's the story. CBK clears 20% sale of Nyachai Lane Credit Bank. Continental Hotel aims to pay 25 million. Coop Bank. Carrier targets record shillings 16 billion in betting taxes as experts see landmines ahead. Merali company sells at 5% stake in Everready. Even before we get to that, to the aspect of that, the aspect of the depth of this conversation. Now, am I the only person who feels that we're having the wrong conversation as a nation? When you look at the headlines.
Absolutely. That's why I went straight to the taxes. Absolutely.
What do you think?
Absolutely. I would be very amazed if there's any home in this country. Because we are 54 million Kenyans.
Yes.
If there's any home in this country that is not feeling some sort of economic pain, financial pain, money pain, whichever way you want to describe it. And that is clearly not reflected in the headlines you have just stated. I'm sure the Standard is no different.
Yeah.
I'm sure the others are also no different. And this is the sadness of what we're dealing with. I don't know whether it's lack of enough information about the economy. Maybe the economy doesn't sell headlines. I don't know what. I don't want to blame them. But I can tell you that is the biggest, most challenging aspect of any Kenyan life today. Okay. And it will be for some time to come. So it's very unfortunate to not see that. So when I see the tax demonstrations, I understand it. I think we all understand it, because the proposed finance bill in its form is pain. It's pain. People are just seeing pain. And they can see the future of that pain means a very dismal life. And those demonstrations, I think, are expected. I think you probably will get a few more from unions and so on and so forth, because as you also know, we have not gotten to match salaries to the cost of living. But there is one fundamental thing that is not being addressed by not only the papers, but also by our leaders. What is the fundamental problem we are addressing? There's no government. I can tell you.
How do you mean there's no government?
There's no government that I can tell you that sits down and says, I want to cause pain on my population, on my populace. Nobody in his right mind sits and says, I want to cause pain. There is a reason. And that's what we are not addressing. When you talk about taxation, it's punitive, it is unpopular, and it's necessitated by something. And that is what we are not addressing. I think it's one of the leaders, I think it was Senator Aaron Cheriot, who some time ago, and I've seen he's kept quiet since then, said it's one thing to address the reduction of taxes and say the finance bill doesn't work. But if you don't address the debt question, that is not a solution. What we are addressing here is the debt question. Debt is the biggest burden on Kenyan lives. And in as much as the newspapers are not carrying that, there are conversations going on all over this country where there's a greater understanding of what makes an economy, greater understanding of how debt is not a pancreas to economic success. It can also be a huge burden as we are facing today. And a greater understanding of the sovereign's role in this. That we are each and every one of us liable for what our leaders do. So we have a situation here that we must address, and I've been trying to, over a series of conversations, trying to simplify it. The issue is the debt burden. Somebody over the weekend, casually said, but we've always had debt. I said, yes, but never this amount of debt. Let me give a synopsis. When Mwai Kibaki left office 10 years ago, our country is very much like our homes. I like to simplify this. We all earn something in our homes to keep our homes going. So let us take Kenya revenue income as 100 shillings. So Kenya revenue gives the government, which are taxes, 100 shillings. When Kibaki left, of that apportionment of 100 shillings, 18 shillings of that 100 shillings was going to pay debt. It was simply that. Right? 18 shillings was his debt servicing obligation annually.
18 shillings.
18 shillings. Okay. We did a recent calculation the other day, and looking at the revenue figures that are coming in as of end of April, and the estimate to the end of June, is looking more like 80 shillings are going to go to paying debt.
Out of 100?
Out of 100.
Wow, okay.
In April, it said that we had collected about 1.5 trillion in terms of tax collections. The tax obligations, the debt obligations this financial year are 1.4 trillion. 1.4.
1.4 trillion.
So you do a little math, and I hope you have a pen and a paper, because I'm going to challenge you with some math.
You can write somewhere.
Soon. In fact, I'll take you to that just now. So out of 1.4 trillion, we have only collected 1.5 at the end of April.
Wow.
So you have 2 months, right, in order to collect a modicum of some income to pay that debt, to pay to meet other expenditure. Now, our estimate is that it will be about 80% of our revenue is going to paying that 80%. Debt of 1.4 trillion. Wow. In other words, we are saying we do not see a collection of, we see a collection of less than 1.9. I think we're estimating around 1.8 trillion.
So in the next 2 months, we're going to collect around
1.8 trillion as a maximum of tax collection.
Around 400 billion.
Now, if you take your pen, that is 80 shillings of the 100.
Oh,
the government
80%.
80%
of our collection.
Yes. The government thereafter needs, because this is a first charge item, 30 shillings for the county.
From the remaining 20,
yes.
They need 30 shillings.
Yes. So what is the figure?
So you're in short of 10 shillings. Okay.
They need 50 shillings to pay salaries.
So now it's 60 shillings.
Right.
Okay.
They need about 30 shillings to 35 shillings to pay operations of government.
So that is 95 shillings. Now we are in debt already.
Now that is negative 95. So we have reached more or less the threshold of borrowing more than 100%, almost 100% rather,
Wow.
of our income on recurrent expenditure.
So in short, we collect to pay debt.
We are collecting.
Then we borrow again.
Then we are borrowing again.
Wow.
Which means we cannot go beyond that. So we have what you call a very serious debt crisis because the biggest outflow of our income is going to debt. Now, in our homes, if a bank was to assess risk, right, they look at us and they see that if we are going to give this person a loan, if they have exceeded 30% of their income, in other words, 30 shillings of the 100 going towards paying a debt, this person will enter a debt trap. He will need more and more money to sustain his living.
Wow.
Very similar to a nation. In fact, a nation, the cutoff is about 25, but let's even give it 30. It needs more and more income, more and more debt to sustain its living. And that's a tragedy we are in. In order to pay for the maid in your house, the food on your table, school fees, the water bill, the electricity bill, you need to borrow. You're not borrowing to create new income.
You're borrowing to
survive. Okay. And the minute you're getting that to that stage, you are at a point of no return and it has to come to an end. You'll either be declared bankrupt if you're a company. In a home, you will no longer have your home because you will not be able to meet your expenditure, even rent. So this is where we are as a nation.
Are we saying that is where we are?
That is where we are. This is the reality.
We are short of being declared bankrupt.
This is the reality of our situation. Now, I like to compare it with other nations. In the most recent past, we've had two countries that have had what you call debt default. One is Ghana. Ghana last year, in December, declared a debt default.
So, in short, you're now proposing a debt default?
No, I'm not going to solutions yet. I'm not going to solutions yet.
Okay.
I am comparing simply
the state of debt.
The state of debt.
Okay.
Ghana had reached 70% of its revenue going to pay debts.
70%.
And they said, we can't meet this obligation anymore. Okay. Sri Lanka reached 90%. And I think we all watched it on TV.
Yes.
We are now tethering on 80%.
Almost heading to Sri Lanka.
Almost 80%. We are at a crisis beyond your imagination and mine. That is a reality. And, you know, I would like to put some positive notes to this as we go along, because it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
But I can assure you that the only way we are going to deal with this is by accepting the reality of our situation. And there are other indicators, and I want to be clear about that. The first indicator is Moody's. Moody's is a rating agency.
Okay.
There are two major rating agencies in the world. Moody's is one, Finch is the other. Moody's, most recently, came up with two statistics in a month, this month of May, on Kenya. It says we are downgraded from B2 to B3. Right? In the second. In the first, they said we are heading towards B3. 2 weeks later, we are at B3.
Okay.
There's now a third one this last weekend. Because the cause of that downgrading was simply this, that we are unable to raise enough liquidity to meet our obligations.
All right.
Right? Our debt obligations, both domestic and foreign debt. This weekend, they've downgraded 3 Kenyan banks from B2 to B3. I want you to understand that when you get below B3, it's called C. And C, Gerald, principally says this, you are going to default.
And actually, in the
There's
interest
not even any two ways.
In the interest of laymen like us who don't understand economics, maybe you can just help us break down the ratings. What is B3, B2, and
I
see
think
what
I
exactly
had
does happen.
I would like you to read it, actually. It's a very nice chart that goes, that has a very nice color bar that you will enjoy here. Is it again? These.
All right, meanwhile,
I would like you to read it.
okay.
No, it's here. I hope you can see that nicely.
Okay. All right, so this is a Moody's rating scale. Lowest level of credit, that is AAA. Is it?
That is AAA.
I'm right, okay?
What color is it?
It's blue.
Right.
Okay. AA1, AA2, AA3, very low credit risk.
What color is that?
A1, I think still blue.
Yes.
Okay. A1, A2, A3. This is, I think, which blue is this now? A darker blue.
Yes.
Men are not good with colors.
Yes.
B, double A,
In other words, those are safe waters.
B2A, now that is moderate. You're somewhere. Okay. BA1, BA2, BA3, substantial credit risk. B1, B2, B3, high credit risk.
What color are those?
Wow. Now we are getting to amber.
Right.
CAA1, CAA2, CAA3, very high credit risk.
What color is that?
Red.
Right. That's Gerald. You got to get the color scheme very clearly.
Wow.
We are
Yes,
now on what you call amber, high credit risk, and the lowest level of amber. In other words, as you are coming to a traffic light, is the last 10 seconds before it switches to red. Right?
Yes.
And red, you can see, is very high credit risk. In other words, the country shall default or the company shall default.
Okay.
So Kenya is downgraded to B3, the lowest level of the amber color.
Wow.
And so are 3 banks over this last weekend. Primarily because those 3 banks are heavily invested in government security bonds, in government treasury bonds.
But I thought those should be the safe areas.
No, they're actually saying that paper is now, that's what Moody is telling you. When Moody is telling you that your highest borrower, which is the government, is now a big credit risk.
Wow.
If you have invested in it, you also are at a point of high risk.
Wow.
That is what Moody is telling you.
So that means then that we have less and less people investing in government bonds and government securities. And also in turn, it means then less and less money for the government. Right?
What happens is that you have people wanting maybe to invest, but they want a higher interest rate.
Okay.
What Moody's is directly inferring is that the government bond has now become what you call a junk bond.
Oh, okay.
Yes. A junk bond, if you can read I think maybe you go to your computer.
Okay. Junk bond.
Junk bond, self what junk bonds mean.
Okay. What is a junk bond? Junk bonds are bonds that carry higher risk of default than most bonds issued by corporations and governments. A bond is a debt promised to pay. In short and way.
But high yielding. High yielding. High yielding, but high risk.
High risk.
That is now what that bond you're saying is safe has become. A government bond is now a junk bond.
A risk bond.
High risk bond. High yielding,
but
in other words, high interest rate, but high
risk.
High risk of default.
Wow. Okay. So, Jimmy, so who is to blame for this? Because we are looking at these numbers, and I've had your conversations that you've had before elsewhere, and you've given us a chronology of events, economic events in this country, from Kenyatta's to Moi's to Kibaki's to Uhuru's and where we are now. Where does this blame sit? Is it an evolution, a normal evolution? Or
No, absolutely. No, this is very deliberate.
All right.
Economic policies are very deliberate on a government. This is not by accident or evolution. It's very deliberate. You can say along the way there are global issues that may affect your direction. But the initial policies are always very clear. My view is that the previous government adopted from 2013, a demand-driven economic model. Spend. Take loans and spend. And that is the cost of where we are today. They did not, in my view, focus on the supply side of economics. They did not focus on production. They focused on spending. In other words, government being the driver and the overall driver of all economic activity. Borrow and spend. And they did so to the extent that we're having today. I don't want to get into inefficiencies or corruption or anything else. It was a policy that was taken. And this is what it has cost us. So what has happened is that we have blown this big balloon and it's now popping before our faces. Because we accumulated debt we cannot pay for. Because the factors of production are not able to pay for this. We didn't grow the factors of production as much as we did this debt. Okay. That's principally it. It's deliberate. And then now you can add on top of that a certain amount of global issues. A certain amount. But you cannot blame the global world, for example, the war in Ukraine, on our problems. No. It's just a factor, right? And it may have some significant factors we talk today, but it's still a ways to go. It's not the main reason.
So we are borrowing to consume, not to produce. That's where the started beating us.
The principle is that, in other words, we borrowed to spend on the basis of consumption and on the basis that spend would spur economic activity. And it's a demand side economics is a brand. Right. It's a brand. It's a theory. And that is what has been practiced over the last 10 years. And it hasn't worked. Now, this government has come in and they've talked about bottom up. I've not understood it yet. Maybe you can help me. I've not quite understood it. Honestly, I've not quite understood it because I've not seen how it is working in the current day that we are living for me to articulate it. For example, look at the finance bill, which is supposed to be a solution to this debt problem. I don't see an exception on taxation here. You see, it is
no
still
departure. Okay.
You see, it is still taxing everybody. There's nobody who is being excluded. And cumulatively, no matter which way you look at it, because I've had some arguments that some taxes are being lowered, the cumulative impression still being given is that you're raising tax to be a higher percentage of GDP than it has been.
On the same population.
So it is still raising tax.
All right. Mheshimiwa, before we get into the solutions, of course, and try to find a way out of this, Treasury PS Chris Kipto seems to disagree with you on the ratings. And that video is coming up in a minute. But in a nutshell, he's saying that the Moody's rating is still not badly off. We are good somehow. And they say that we expect close to 200 billion by the close of 2022 to 2023. That's around 1.0 B to US dollars. Interbank market is back to normalcy. I think spreads are trimming. Reverse repo market shows banks are struggling with liquidity. Let's just listen to that video.
Yeah.
And then you tell me what you think, because it seems to disagree with you. All right.
2 months ago, the interbank market was no longer functional. In fact, it had collapsed. But I want to report to you that now interbank market transactions are back to normal. We're doing up to 20% of interbank, which is, you can now see the spread has reduced. If you check even today, you will find that the spread has come down significantly. Then I want to also add, because you asked the question, when are we going to normality when it comes to liquidity? That's why I mentioned about the rating agencies, and I said things are not badly off. We expect this week to get an additional $300 billion from which is within our borrowing plan, external, and within the next 2.5 weeks, before end of this month, we expect another $1 billion from the World Bank. So we will have an injection of about nearly 200 billion shillings into the economy before the month of June. And our plan is immediately we receive the money, we pay, because it's within budget. Pay ministries, pay counties, pay CDF, and these monies will get into the liquidity, it will improve our liquidity. And then we should be able to see now better performance, even in our borrowing plan. Because you will see the market is very tight. If you look at the reverse repo at the central bank, we are at the highest amount. I think central bank is giving nearly 147 billion to banks because they are struggling with liquidity. But if this money is coming, we expect to pick up.
All right. That is Dr. Chris Kipto right there speaking. And he's also giving us his side of the story, his side of numbers. And he's telling us that it's not all gloom as every other person wants to make you believe. And that, we're doing well. The faculties are doing well. All the elements, the machine is not screaming. The country is fairly floating. What do you make of this? What exactly is he saying?
Well, it was a very interesting statement from the PS. First, he starts by discarding Moody's. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting. When there's a low rating, governments are very good at saying that's a poor rating. That's just for ignore. But when there's a high rating, they're busy to point at it. And then at the end of the statement, he agrees to something Moody is saying, that banks have got no liquidity, right? Mm-hmm. And they are borrowing heavily from the central bank. Mm-hmm. So he confirms Moody's parameters.
In other language.
In other language. Right. But I think what is even more shocking is that he then goes to admit that he's borrowing 200 billion shillings external and another $1 billion, which is another 150 billion shillings or so, again from World Bank external. And he directs that money towards what he says is counties, CDF. That's what he said. Now, if one was to read law, and this is where we are getting wrong with all this. If one is to read just basic financial law in Kenya, it is anchored in the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act. Counties' money is a first charge item of revenue, not debt.
Of revenue.
Of revenue.
The 30 shillings.
The 30 shillings we are talking about. Okay. It comes from revenue, not debt. So he's saying we have no revenue. He's admitting we have no revenue. So we are borrowing externally to give counties. That is not even allowed in law.
To finance what you should be financing from revenue collection.
You must, see, it's a first charge item. There are 3 first charge items.
Debt
repayment. Debt repayment, counties, and pension.
Okay.
Those are the three. Salaries are even below that. Those are the three. Out of the revenue, in other words, the taxation, we all provide to Kenya Revenue Authorities, Kenya Revenue Service. You are admitting that you are borrowing externally
To finance a first
dollars to finance a first charge of revenue item is an admittance that you don't have revenue. That is what Moody's is saying.
Oh, in other words,
The government has got no liquidity. But I want to go even further because these are their estimates of revenue.
Please.
In April this year. Now, they had said they are going to borrow domestically 886 billion shillings. So far, as of end of April, they've only managed to get 406. Half.
Okay.
There's a reason. There is a reason why there is no uptake
Of the bond.
of the bonds. All right?
All right.
They had estimated, as I told you earlier, that they would get 2.1 trillion in terms of tax revenue. They are only at 1.5 so far. They're estimating 1.8. So for Bwana PS to say they have no liquidity, they have plenty of liquidity, and that more or less Moody's is scaremongering is not correct. Because as you heard, he goes further to admit otherwise. You know, one big problem we are facing is that, you know, I think when you're in government, you must try and paint some rosy picture.
Sell some more.
Because sell some hope.
Okay.
And I can understand the predicament he may be in. But some of us here now must also start speaking the truth. Because when we talk truth to reality, we're able to face the challenge and maybe discuss the options available in a more transparent and probably acceptable manner.
Okay.
You know you have got a problem and you've accepted it, now you start looking at options properly, right? We have a very serious problem. The other thing I want you to note is that we have had promises of the dollar coming down.
Exactly.
There's a reason why it's not coming down.
Why is it not coming down? We've had a negotiation G2G on petroleum that we actually said was the biggest consumer of dollars.
Yes,
right?
you see, there is this premise that you are going to control exchange rate with trade. In other words, if we are not borrowing, if we are not using it for a particular purpose, then that will control it. That's the trade side. This is new to me. It's very new to me.
Government, it has the best.
It's
it has
new
the best. I have to believe
it probably does. It probably does, but it's new to me. I've seen exchange rates controlled more by inflows.
Okay.
In other words, the country is producing more and more in terms of our cash crops. So we are bringing more inflows in foreign exchange. So
In
we are
terms of
selling
exports.
more coffee, tea, horticulture, tourism is booming, right? Or we found some very good mineral here, right? Or we have a huge direct FDI for some reason. So, like the way our diaspora is very supportive of this country. Or maybe a huge investor that has come and said, we like the air in Kenya and we are putting in $20 billion. Something of the sort. You see, this is what I know, inflows, not trade. So this was an interesting experiment, right? An interesting one, because, when you're between a rock and a hard place, you try what you can. And so far as we are witnessing, it's not working. Right? We're still losing roughly a shilling a week.
Yeah, we're still hitting the
Right?
lowest low.
A shilling a week. Now, I want you to understand what that is to the debt book. Every time we lose a shilling, our debt increases by 40 billion.
Wow. Okay.
By 40 billion.
When we lose a
By
shilling
40
in exchange,
Yes, in exchange.
our debt portfolio increases by 40
By 40 billion.
Okay.
Right? Now, this is the predicament we are in. The only reason you are having issues of the finance bill is because you have a monster called debt that you have to deal with. And that is the elephant in the room. That is what we should be discussing. Every other conversation is a by the way.
So,
like I've seen your argument. Oh, housing fund. Oh, sijui nini. I saw today a big thing on betting tax and so on. Yeah, these will all increase. These are all going to be avenues to raise more and more money because we are addressing one fundamental expenditure. In the coming financial year, debt is not 1.4 trillion to be paid. It is 1.7 trillion.
Oh, okay.
1.7. Remember this year, I'm saying we are not going to collect more than maybe 1.8.
1.8, yes.
Right?
Like in a max of 1.8.
1.7 in the next financial year is to be paid in debt. The following financial year, 2024, 2025, a similar amount. Please remember, that is the shilling amount today. We don't know what the shilling is going to be by the time we get there.
Could be worse or could be better.
Yes, a few months ago it was 120. It's now going to 140. In maybe by the end of the year we are talking a very different figure. Next year, if it's at 200, what do you think we're going to be paying, looking for in terms of Kenyan shillings?
Oh.
So we have a crisis here that we are each and every one of us going to bear unless we fully deal with it head on. The elephant in the room is this debt.
So before we get there, just as we get into that, now the government has given us two different solutions for different problems. On the issues of the dollar and the exchange rate, you mentioned that every time we lose a shilling, our debt portfolio raises by 40 billion. But it seems that's a crisis now. It's not even the economy. It's a debt situation. Now, they have said that they gave that a trade solution, that if we can trade better, if we can import better, we can get more time to pay back our import responsibilities, maybe we could somehow stagger the value of the shilling against the dollar. Now you're saying that has not worked. Dr. Chris Kipto, the PS for Treasury, just spoke right now from that video. And he is telling us that, guys, chill, we have a solution. We are getting money to pump into this economy. And guys, when the money lands here, you'll see the miracles that will work. Things will change. You'll have more money in circulation. Are you saying that the government is incoherent economically?
I don't want to know.
Because you've been angry.
I would rather you judge that. What I am saying.
you are the economist.
I would rather you judge that. Because, we all have ears, we all have eyes. We read, we hear. And we see. So I'd rather you judge that. I'll come to my judgment in the fullness of time. What I believe they are doing is avoiding to deal with the elephant in the room and avoiding to make very serious decisions.
Okay.
Very hard decisions. That is what they're avoiding.
All right.
Because a lot of these hard decisions have major political ramifications.
Okay.
They are choosing what they believe is the softest one. This is why you're seeing this finance bill with raising taxes. They believe it's the softest one.
The easiest way to do it.
The easiest way to do it. And they are going to have great difficulty because I can assure you, even though we believe they will pass it, I don't believe they will ever collect any of those targets.
Right.
Their target there is to raise revenue. We are saying it's 1.8 this year they will collect. They believe they can collect 2.9. Really, you're going to squeeze this economy until what? It's just, to me, it's not possible. In economic terms, by the way, there's a terminology called the Laffer curve. I think we reached that long time ago. In other words, a point of diminishing returns in collection of taxes. So I believe we reached that long time ago. That threshold was reached. We've been off target severally. So this is a game that is just trying to kick the can down the road.
Okay.
I'm hoping, maybe, as you are saying, that there is some benefactor out there that is going to be sympathetic to this lovely Kenyan that is loved by all over the world, that other people, taxes should pay for our decisions or misdecisions. We sometimes like to behave like we're a nanny state, like the whole world owes us our saving. Yeah. This situation has happened to other countries. I don't know why we think we are so different.
We are not special.
That there is something so special about us that we will not go through what other countries have gone through.
All right, 3 things before we, when you come back from these 3 things, now we'll get deep into the debt question. And you were running for president, and you've given us the exact history of debt as it has been. And you telling us that this is how things should have been. When you get back from these 3 issues, you'll tell us exactly what you would have done different as a president.
Absolutely.
Yes. So before that, 3 things. Devolution. You mentioned that devolution is the first charge. Takes away 30 shillings, right, from our collection.
This coming financial year is taking away 40 shillings.
40 shillings. So it's even becoming worse.
Yes, 385.
So it takes 40 shillings. There is a question on devolution, whether we really need it or not. Now, secondly, is the issue of a 3% that you're talking about housing levy that's supposed to give Kenyans better homes and solution for the housing crisis. And third is a financial bill 2023-2024. Right? I'll start with devolution. We are seeing a case here where the governors are fighting with the president on the plan of the national government to take back healthcare from the counties. And the argument out here, and I'm one of those people who have actually made this argument, is that do we really need counties? And I've said this before, that maybe we should disband them and look at other things to do.
Why do you think they should be disbanded?
Because it carries the largest cost with a little
return. No. The largest cost is debt.
All right, you take us
the largest cost. No, the largest cost. No, why do you want them not there? The largest cost on our books is debt. It is not counties.
All right.
Yes.
So what is the state of devolution?
What is wrong with devolution?
So una shida na devolution?
No, not in the least. And I think that is something we must accept. It's in our constitution. It is going nowhere. Maybe we should perfect its efficiency. And I can tell you, if you can perfect its efficiency, it is probably one of the biggest catalysts and drivers of economic development.
Interesting.
So I hold a very different view to you on that. I actually support devolution. I like it. I think it's just been inefficient, and I disagree with the cost. The highest cost we are living, the highest cost we have today, and that's why I want Kenyans to focus, is debt. And this debt has been accumulated by the national government, not by counties. Okay? Right.
So devolution,
the next one
still stay. Right. So an issue is that Kenyans seem to disagree with you, because if I can just look at this, on the Daily Nation this morning, governors fight Ruto's plan to take over healthcare. Now, I'll just sample some of the comments on that. Alba Ulemse says health should be part of the national government, since devolution has financial challenges that at times cause lack of drugs and salaries delay. You'll never hear health workers complain at KNH because the national government knows how to take care of them, unlike county government, where they cry foul and stoop to corruption for patients to get health care. Now, Moses Simiyu, for 10 years, the healthcare sector has suffered immense damage. The UHC has failed because the county government has never put health as a priority. This service sector needs to be taken up by the national government. The health sector is ailing, and being devolved was a big mistake. To add on, it has been the greatest avenue for corruption in the country. It's high time for it to be devolved back to the national government. Julia says a human resource system in health sector should be taken back to national government. Counties are treating healthcare workers like manamba. It's sad. So, in short, that is just a nutshell of what Kenyans think about this. And the money that you're saying the counties take up to, if you follow that money, they end up in recurrent expenditures. You'll not see a road from that 40 shillings or 30 shilling connected. I mean, you'll not find something tangible. It's going into recurrent expenditure. Can we build our economy that way through counties?
That's the point I'm trying to make. Right. Your challenges and even all those comments are about efficiencies and corruption.
Okay.
Right? Those are two issues that even plague the national government. Inefficiencies and corruption. Those two are trickle-down effects even from the national government. If the national government was intolerant to those two issues, even devolved government would be acting the same way.
Okay.
Those are symptoms. But the principle of devolution, the principle is good because you are decentralizing decision making from one capital and taking it to 47 capitals. You're distributing a small amount of money. You're creating an ownership and capacity for people on the ground, right, to spur development. That is one side you're talking about health. But if you look at some of the counties and see what they've done to agriculture, just focusing extensively on agriculture, if they had more support
from national government,
they would do wonders, right, to boost production. So I think that's only one side. And people should, it's 10 years is a short memory. They are forgetting the 10 years before that, when the Ministry of Health used to deal with all our health in this nation. I don't think there's anybody who has been in the period of 20 years that will tell you that when the national government was dealing with health, for example, it was such a great period in our lives. They had the same problems, same complaints across the board. That's why so many people welcome devolution, even of health services. I believe that what you are talking about is a national challenge, not a devolution challenge. It is an ethos challenge. It is our ethics and morals that you're talking about, not a question of devolution. So there I disagree with you.
So what is also
devolution is actually good? No, national government. The first thing, please understand, because everyone's looking at cost, it is not the counties. The monster in the room is debt taken by the national government.
Okay, not the governors.
Let's not the governors. Let's focus there.
All right. 3%, will it work or not? Do you think Kenyans need ombudsman houses?
You see, earlier on, I asked you a question. I said that I know the economics that was done under the previous regime was demand-side economics. That was spending and debt-driven. I've asked you about bottom-up. I don't think you've been very clear.
But I'm not the one of bottom-up.
I have. Let me not put it on you. Let me just say that we all seem not quite clear what it means. Now, when you are now getting into what I believe is being sold as a welfare program, because I've not understood it, this housing levy issue, but it's being seen and marketed as though it is our responsibility, those who earn, to help somebody else build a house. I'm wondering what is the economic philosophy here, because I thought we were a capitalist nation.
Yeah, so it's patriotism.
Are we a capitalist? Are we following a capitalist economic model?
I think we are capitalists, not socialists.
Right. Then that is socialism.
Okay.
What you have defined there as welfare is socialism.
Ujama.
So we need to understand what are we which philosophy are we following here?
Okay.
This is what confuses many people, right? We are unclear, right, about what we're following now. Is socialism part of bottom-up? I don't know. I don't know.
All right. So, in short, you're saying it's not working. It's not going to work.
To me, it's not capitalism.
Okay.
It's not.
So, is it going to work or not?
No, I don't believe it will work, because that is not Kenya. It will not work. Yes.
Yeah.
It will not work. Not as envisaged. Definitely not.
But we are going to get money.
So let us check from who? From who?
The government is saying they're going to get the money from you.
You see, this is the Lafa cover I was talking about. That no matter which way you turn this, it is a tax.
Okay.
Correct? Which means that you're increasing taxation. And I told you that we've reached a point of diminishing returns. And when you reach a point of diminishing returns, it means that you're going to collect less and less the more you're taxing. And as you collect less, there's going to be less and less towards any of those things that you're trying to do. I don't even understand, apart from the welfare aspect of it, what is the need for this fund? Is the need to stimulate some growth, some catalyze development, catalyze the economy? If that is the case, you will not stimulate this economy by taking from us.
Okay.
You can only stimulate by giving us, not from taking.
So it's like removing from your right pocket to the left.
I keep telling you, I'm confused as to what all this is. I'm very confused. When Kibaki took over power in 2003, 2003, he found an economy, and I've seen people trying to compare then and now. He found an economy that was at -1 GDP growth. -1.
Okay.
Right? But Moi regime did not hand over to him debt as is today.
All right.
So these are two different arguments. So when he took over, he had a negative GDP growth. In other words, of all that we're producing in this country, we were producing less.
By
It's
what?
never happened. Okay. That is the historical point, that even though our population is increasing, even though maybe we are working more man hours, we are negative. We've never had that history. That's his only point in history, we were -1. Now, what he did, his stimulus program was not to come and say, I'm going to tax you. No. He came and he said two things. And this is also something I would like to talk about in relation to tax. He said, my stimulus program is something called free primary education. All right, Gerald? You are spending 10,000 shillings a term on your child. Every January, they open school. I'm giving it back to you.
So you'll not be
Government will spend it. So when he gave you back that money, you went and spent it on something else. You opened a business, you bought, let us say, if you were buying one Colgate a month, you now could afford 2. So Colgate, as a manufacturer, had to increase its production. It imported new equipment,
and the money came back.
got more manpower, right? Improved its sales, and in a sense, because of that, tax came back to the government because of a volume increase.
Okay.
Are we together? Stimulus is something you give us.
Okay.
It's not something you take from us to stimulate somewhere else.
Okay.
Free primary education, in its principle, economically, returned its money within a 3-year period to the exchequer.
Okay.
A great model, because you had a volume of 1 million people or so who you were giving people money, you were giving them their money back. Right? Now, in relation to tax, he did increase tax from 220 billion to 1 trillion over his period. But he didn't do so by taxing more. No.
He did more
He
by trying to
expanded the
produce more.
base. He expanded the volume. In other words, he removed barriers to development. Anything that was constricting us from getting an economic welfare. So, for example, in the media, if you were in the Nyayo era, Gerald, you would never have been licensed to open up this radio station.
You would have closed
So
it
he
long
gave
time
you a
ago.
license. Right? He told you, no, just go and pay a small fee, you get your license. Right? And because now you had a new reach of market, I, as an advertiser, would come to you and say, you have a new market there that I want to sell my product. I produce soap. Right?
Yeah.
And I would sell more because it's now marketed. You would earn income, I would earn more income, and I would pay tax. So it's the volume because of the removal of barriers that he created. He didn't come to tax the same people. And this is the minded of difference with what is being taken now as an economic model. Right? We are being told, maybe now we become socialists. We are being told, maybe now, we still need to bear this heavy burden of taxation on the few that are doing so.
All right. I would have gone back to that question on coherence, but you already answered and you said you don't want to make your judgment. Now, on the finance bill, I'm saying honestly, there's a lot of questions for you here. A lot of questions here for you. But I think some of them would be maybe you've answered. But so that as you're answering the finance bill question, maybe you can just combine with anything that you think we have not answered on this. Job now is asking, kindly ask Mosh to answer these questions. Do you think Ruto's taxation plan will take us to a happy future? I think he has answered that. Will the cost of basic commodity come down in the near future? How will it be solved to favor common mwananchi? Adopt subsidy way? Is subsidy an option? 3, are you not just disagreeing with the government's plan because you never got a chance to be there? Advice, Ruto. Now, okay. Mheshimiwa Kamau says, ask Mheshimiwa Wanjigi how Uro's economic decisions are affecting William Ruto's presidency as far as the economy is concerned. If the president continues with the East financial relationship like his predecessor, can he negotiate with China as far as our loans are concerned? I think we'll get into the solutions, of course, on that. In the last 10 years, we borrowed 6.7 trillion. The loans were borrowed at 100 bob or less, but today we are servicing them at almost 140 bob per dollar. That's Willie Kamau. Keja Graphics from the USA. What is expectation? Loan or what? I think it was on Dr. Chris's comments. Atticus now all the way from the United Kingdom, London. Jambo Gerald, good to see you in good health. Salimia Mr. Wanjigi. Greetings from London, UK. Larry Mengich, good morning. Getting your live from Mount Elgon. Salimia Mheshimiwa Tompenda sana. Karanja Kinywa Insightful. John Mutua watching one-on-one from Doha, Qatar. Okay. Nyakiriki Jones all the way from Kakamega. I think some of the questions, of course, that have been asked here, you already asked, but even as you get into the financial bill question, you can just combine on the foresight, what exactly is going to happen.
What I would like to do is, and I've been quite deliberate on this, I am saying that the elephant in the room economically is the debt issue.
Yes.
That is where the problem is. And the solutions are how we address the debt issue. Okay? Nothing else. So people's conjecture from there is up to them. But I can tell you, let us accept that the biggest burden to each and every one of us is debt. It's not devolution. It is not this. It is not that. It is not even corruption.
Even the weather.
Even right now, it's not even corruption. Those are just by the ways. Okay? The biggest issue, right, is debt. It's not even the weather. You're right.
Okay.
You're right. It is debt. Once we accept that, let's look at solutions. And this is where the finance bill comes in. The current government's solution to the debt problem is to tax us more.
Good
is
idea.
to raise, and this is a pancreas from IMF, right? You have said that in the next financial year, you're going to go from 4.8% growth, GDP growth, to 6.1. To 6.1. So this economy is doing well, it's going to grow. So why is it not shown commensurately in the level of taxation? So raise your GDP to tax ratio. Okay? So that's the first thing, which is what you're seeing is the premise of the finance bill. The next thing IMF said, right, is please do not support your shilling anymore. The central bank, over a period, has been supporting this shilling. Let it get out, let it be on free fall. Let the market determine the rate of the shilling. Number 3, do not in any manner or form try and set a benchmark on interest rates. I think you remember some time ago the president tried to say he's not going to borrow bonds at more than 10%. Right? Today they are borrowing at more than 10%. The market should determine. Right? Now, all those 3 prescriptions that we've been given, that this government has taken on, are very painful. You can see the complaints on taxation, the finance bill. You can see the damage when you have had a free fall on the shilling, and you have not even seen it yet. I think it's still being supported. Right? But you're going to see it, which means that we can anticipate that it's going to drop even further. Then you have got bonds, bills. You've now seen they're taking up, even if you put at 15, 18, 20%, they will take your bid. Right? That was the last auction 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So you have a situation now that are just going to be pain, because all these have got input costs to anything we do. If we are trying to produce, these are costs to your production. Right? You raise the price of fuel in finance bill, through taxation, through an increase in VAT, it raises cost of production. You raise the amount of government interest rate on bills and bonds, it raises your borrowings in the banks, right? You depreciate, you allow a free fall of the shilling, it increases, as we said earlier, the amount of debt that is accumulating. So as far as I'm concerned, my conjecture, and I don't think I'm alone, is that this is but one solution that they are attempting, and my view is that it's going to fail. It will not work, and we are going to come back to addressing the monster in the room called debt. Now, the monster in the room has already reared its head. All right?
Okay.
Last year, we had a situation where we defaulted on SGR, and we paid a heavy penalty for it. December last year, the central bank recalled infrastructure bonds that were due in January and gave them a new life. So we are already at a situation where we are saying we cannot meet our obligations. And that is the thing in the room. We need to address that issue.
Okay.
Because like in your home, you are either paying your rent, right? Or you're feeding your children. So when you had a very well-known established economist in the government, and I suspect his brains, David D, say we are juggling between salaries and debt. They are announcing Gengele. We took on a shida. Took on a shida is your home. Are we going to pay rent? Or are we going to feed the kids? So of course you'll feed the kids. And when you feed the kids, you'll be thrown out of the house. But you say even it's better you find some other place. Even
your stomach is full.
But at least the kids have got food in their stomach. We are now more or less at that level. And when we're at that level, we've got several choices. Because what you're addressing is debt. Okay. We have three choices, principally. The first one, which is the most normal route, is to reschedule the debt.
Okay. The scheduling.
Rescheduling. Please note here, Gerald, that this government has taken the route of we're increasing taxes as the method to deal with debt. Okay? I'm saying that will not work.
But there can only be two ways. Either you're raising revenue or borrowing.
No. Okay. Please hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out.
All right. I'm paying attention.
You have got a debt problem, a debt repayment problem. It is taking up 80% of your revenue. In other words, in the next financial year, Gerald, look how serious it is. 1.7 trillion is going out of this country. It is not going back to Wanjiko and Mora. It is not coming back to this economy. It's going out. They are working. They are sweating. Right? And it's never coming back to them.
Okay.
It's going out. 80% of what they produce. And their lives are not improving. They're getting worse because of it. So the reality is this debt. You can't say you borrow more. You're hanging yourself. I told you we have already reached a level of more than 100, almost 100% of our revenue we are borrowing just to eat, to pay petrol, to pay salaries. That is to eat in your home.
To finance devolution.
So we are at a limit. So we have got to address this monster. And the way this government has decided to address it is say, well, let's get more revenue from the few people that contribute.
That we borrow less.
No, it's not a question of borrowing. Yeah, so you try and borrow less. But you see, it's not a question of borrowing less. It's a question of paying the debt. It's paying the debt. Now, how much more can you squeeze us is what I'm saying. That we have reached a level of diminishing returns. The more you squeeze us, the less you're going to get out of us. So I believe we reached the threshold 2 or 3 years ago. It's now less and less in terms of returns for the government, squeezing us more. And that's the Laffer curve I'm telling you about, that we have reached a point of diminishing returns. Now, that is their solution. My solution is that I'm saying we need to address the debt itself.
Okay.
And how we are going to deal with this monster directly. And directly means that you have mainly three ways of dealing with it.
Okay.
One is rescheduling. Bring everybody into a room and saying,
Goodbye.
this thing, please, give me new terms. If I was to pay over 10 years, give me over 20 years. Yeah, if I was paying this interest rate, give me a different interest rate. If I was to pay you this year so much, please forgive. I can only give half. The rest I'll give in the next few years. Now, that itself has got huge problems. I'll tell you two. Two. One, you have a myriad of debt. Unlike when we did rescheduling during the Moi period under what is called the Paris Club Agreements, this time we have three main components of debt. When we did it under President Moi, they were just bilateral donors, which fell under Paris Club. So World Bank, IMF, our bilaterals were all in one club called Paris Club. So we could sit down, agree with them. Okay. This time you've got three components of debt. You have Paris Club where those bilaterals are. You have Chinese debt, and you have London Club. London Club is where you have the Eurobonds, sovereign bonds, Eurobonds, which are now almost 1 trillion. All right? Now, to bring all those people in a room is a nightmare. So that's one challenge.
Okay.
Right? It's a nightmare to get consensus. The second is something that was done with London Club, with the Eurobonds. There is a proviso that if we seek rescheduling, their loans are paid immediately. Okay. So it means 1 trillion needs to be found to pay London Club, the Eurobonds, as a whole. Not just the ones that are due in this next financial year, all of them. So there we have got two major challenges, okay, to addressing rescheduling.
Two of them.
Two. The next option, right, is what has most recently been done by Ghana. And that is what is called debt distress exchange. Where you say, it's called DDE, where you say, we cannot pay.
Okay.
We are defaulting.
You don't have the money.
We don't have the money. And you force all the creditors into the room, and they did so with domestic creditors. And it triggers off what you call a haircut. All right? So we say, you had a bond of 1 million shillings, right? Now you have to take a haircut. Ghana's was at 30%. So remove 300,000. Now your bond is 700,000. And we are not paying you interest for the next 2 or 3 years, right? In the third year we've renegotiated your interest rate. So the old bond you had, we're throwing it into the dustbin. Here's the new one. Take it or leave it. Now that normally immediately causes a bank crisis. That's why you're seeing Moody's talking about 3 banks here that are almost are in that crisis position. Okay. Should there be a default on domestic debt? Now, that crisis means that you go to the sovereign. You and I who have bank accounts, you and I who are on M-Pesa, and you do the same haircut. It's called a haircut. Right? And you stabilize an economy, but it takes hard beating.
Okay.
Right? And in Ghana's case, the IMF said, if your sovereign takes this beating, we will come and show you up with your foreign exchange because you still need import cover, you need various things. We will come along the way. But let us see that the sovereign has taken responsibility before we come in to meet your other obligations. Now, that has cost Ghana greatly over the last 4, 5, 6 months. You've had an inflation rate of over 40%, 40, 45%, which means a big devaluation of its currency. You have had runaway exchange rate issues, Nobody wants to hold on to the CD. Even in the marketplace, huku kiosk, huku kwa mama mboga, nobody will take the CD. They want dollars. They want dollars. Right?
As it is in Somalia.
As it is in Somalia, as it is in even places like Zimbabwe. So it causes problems, right? But IMF this week went and looked at their books and they said, good, it looks like you have done a saving on your debt of about almost $5 billion this next financial year of repayments. $5 billion is great. And in light of that, we are giving you $3 billion carrot, right? To help you start bringing up your economy in 3 tranches, right? So they've now honored their carrot. Okay? That was very fast for Ghana. Very fast. In other countries, they have, like Zambia, it has taken more than 2-3 years to get there. Sri Lanka, they are still talking. Pakistan, they are still talking. Argentina, it's a bit quicker, but even there have been issues, right? You saw Greece at one point go through all this, and it had to be the Germans that led a direction. Now, that is an option before us, but we must call it as a country. We must say we want DDE, right? Distressed debt exchange, debt distress exchange. All right? We must call it. Now, the converse of that is that we have a crisis that will come out of default, and we are not proactive enough. And you will see what we have seen in Lebanon, where banks crash and they close the doors on each and every one of us.
Wow, okay.
All right? And to get your money, the bank decides that, maybe if you have some little money there, we'll give you 500 shillings a week to live. It's at their discretion.
And do you think that's a solution, really?
No.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying
It's an option.
that if we do not take, no, it's not an option. That is a terrible option. If we do not take the initiative ourselves and
What are the
initiate
consequences?
the debt default and initiate DDE,
Ourselves.
then we will find ourselves in that situation, which will be worse than DDE. But DDE will also come with a very heavy price on the sovereign. The third option is odious debt. And that is why I feel so well-versed to talk about this subject.
Please.
When I was last here, I told you we did an audit on the debt that had been accumulated over the last 10 years. And the good thing with our new constitution, it anchored our obligations as a sovereign in law. Anything we do in relation to monies, revenue, expenditure, revenue collection or expenditure are anchored in laws. That's why revenue collection is anchored in the finance bill. It becomes law, becomes an act. Expenditure and borrowing are also anchored in bills that become acts. Our debt is anchored in one book called Appropriations Bill Development, because we can only borrow for development. That is our law. And in our Appropriations Bill Development, they tabulate and have tabulated over the last 9 years how much debt we have approved in Parliament. Because it can only be approved in Parliament, because it then becomes an act. It also, in Appropriations Bill Recurrent, because these are the two books that go for expenditure, anchor our debt payments from our taxation. So our forensic audit, which I did in preparation for my presidential race, you must understand the lay of the land. So we did, I believe, what is the first forensic audit on the entire debt from government records. So we looked at what we passed and what our exchequer account in the central bank reads statement. So in our laws, the appropriations bill development, where debt is anchored, our parliament, on our behalf as a sovereign, passed borrowings of 2 trillion shillings.
2 trillion.
2 trillion.
Okay.
Not more than that. What did it read in the
Exchequer
account at central bank? Which is a bank statement. Literally, like if you have a bank account, you get a statement from the account. It reads that we borrowed in the same period 6 trillion.
6 trillion.
6 trillion. That means 4 trillion we did not approve in Parliament.
Okay. So
But please remember, the approval is law. It is not statements. It is not this. It is anchored in law. That's why the finance bill, which is coming to tax you and I, is made law. Expenditure is also made law. In 2 bills, appropriations development, appropriations recurrent. Nowhere else. So I've heard some people say, oh, but the government issued some statement, budgetary policy statement saying it's going to borrow from, I don't know. No. Anchor it in the law.
Put in
Oh, something has been signed somewhere outside the country by so and so and so. Yeah, anchor it in the law. Because it is in the law that there is a very clear schedule of what that money is going to be used for. It says we as a taxpayer are contributing so much for a road in Bungoma, right? And the government of China is contributing so much for the same road. And it is put there and approved by our August House.
That's law.
So when we did the accounting, we said, because we ended this forensic audit in March last year. The central bank account, exchequer account, was showing that we owe 8.4. So we said, okay, 6 has been taken by the regime of Uhuru Kenyatta. There was a carryover of 2.3 from Mwai Kibaki. So that sounds correct. So outstanding balance March 2022 was 8.4 trillion. I said, okay, that seems correct.
Okay.
So we went to the other bill, which makes payments of our debts, which approves payments of our debts. That is the appropriations bill recurrent. Law again. And it shows that in the last 9 years, from our taxes, Kenyans have generously contributed 5.6 trillion to repayment of loans.
5.6.
5.6.
So you should be remaining with something less than 3.
That is, if you do simple math. So how come we are still owing 8.4? These are the questions we raised.
Okay.
How come that credit is not reflecting in central bank? Isitoshe, this 4 trillion that was taken was not approved by us. So what I'm saying is that this debt, if it is not approved by us through the instruments guided in the Constitution that empower our decision as the sovereign,
Then it's not our debt.
then it is not our debt.
Okay.
Then it is what is called odious. In other words, to the regime, not to us as the sovereign. And the most recent challenge to this odious debt has been an issue in Mozambique, where they had taken a similar thing like Eurobonds to the point of $2 billion. And they were calling it there the tuna bond, not the Eurobond. It's called the tuna bond.
Tuna bond, okay.
So called to help them with the blue with the blue economy. They've got great fishing waters and great tuna. But the institutions had not approved it. It was a misappropriated loan. It did not go to the intended purpose. And Mozambicans went to court, the constitutional court. And in 2019, they got a very good judgment. I said, yes, the sovereign Mozambican is not responsible for that debt.
Okay.
And they stopped paying it. Yeah, it had heavy consequences.
But who stops the government? Who stops paying?
No, they have not. They have refused to pay. And the court has said you don't pay, so you must obey the law. IMF got involved and actually has been very instrumental in getting culprits, right up to Credit Suisse and so on. There's been a big purge on previous people who were in government. And even though creditors shied away for a short time, they had a plunge of about 30-40% on inflation. They are now getting up, okay? Because that was removed from their debt book. Yes. So 2 years on, 3 years on, the economy is starting to look up. In other words, they have overcome that odious debt issue. Now, that is also an option available to us. Okay. But this is the kind of conversation we should be having, right? So it's good to see people talk about the finance bill because what we're addressing is the debt problem, how to deal with debt. Okay. But I'm saying, let us deal with the debt directly and look at it and say, 1.7 trillion going out next year. Really?
It's a lot of money.
Really? We cannot afford it.
And we cannot also fix it by taxing?
No, we cannot. Okay. So let's address this monster now.
Ama tuambie watu hatuna pesa. What that can happen? Tuambie hata nyinyi mnaona we have nothing.
That's the point. We do it all ourselves individually. Ndio. Kishindwa kulipa kitu. We say bas tumeshindwa. And you call a round table, right? And you say what you can do. And this is the kind of consideration we must honestly be having. Not trying to say all is rosy. Hakuna rosy hapa. We are all living our lives every day here. There's nothing rosy. Right? There's nothing rosy. So let us just deal with this head on. And that is here and we'll find a solution. Now, I want you to imagine this and those who are listening, that you imagine a saving of 1.7 trillion that was going out to what I call oligarchs inside this good country and even within. And that being plowed back to us in terms of tax relief. Tax relief. In terms of tax relief on the price of electricity, on the price of our fuel. Okay? You can imagine what kind of, now that is what is called a stimulus. Because now you're giving back to us what we were expending. The catalytic effect of it will be phenomenal. Okay. And this is where, when people ask what is my own philosophy, I'm supply side driven, right? I am very clear that we must deal with the supply side of economics. All right? We must, and many people say that is a trickle down. There's a very good memory in history. For those who are young like you, Gerald, you wouldn't know of a president called Ronald Reagan of America. Yes. But when Ronald Reagan of America, the good actor, got to power, he had a similar situation that had prevailed because of the bashing the dollar had gotten during the reign of Nixon and Jimmy Carter. Okay. So he found a balloon of debt. And he is known for being one of the biggest proponents of supply-driven economics. That this is now a time to give back. We have reached the threshold of tax collections. We are now going to spend or tax our way out of this problem. We now must give back
to the people.
To the people, right? And spur vis-a-vis trickle down. Trickle down, not bottom up, trickle down. elements of productivity and economic growth.
Okay.
And he successfully did so. And America has literally survived on what you call Reaganomics ever since that time. Ever since that time. Right? It is now that they are facing the challenge. But you imagine all those regimes have been supply-side economics regimes, and they have done, they achieved world domination.
Okay. Out of that
World
decision.
domination, oh yes. Economic domination really came from Reaganomics. Right? So you spur development by creating employment, by giving back, right? By tax relief
But
to those areas of productivity. But at the same time, you spur production in terms of removing barriers to
trade.
To trade. But not only barriers to trade, barriers to production, even of the most basic farmer in this country.
Okay.
You find what they are getting in terms of a price is nowhere near what they should be getting, right? Because there are so many barriers. So you focus on the supply side, production side, right? And stimulate it with an infusion. And that is the side we lie on.
So let's get a perspective of this. Let's assume we're going to take that option and say, fine, we want to give you back money. The reality is we have a budget reading that's coming in 2 months. I think we're already we're in May in a month also. We should be having our budget. Now, like you have said, you've given us already a green picture on our collection. So it means we are not even meeting the targets to run a budget that's coming up. Now, you need money to give back. You need money. You need money, first of all, for the budget, and you need money. The government needs money to do what it needs to do. So we are saying we are not going to tax. Where else is the money going to get money from?
That's what I was talking about, DDE.
So they can give relief.
That is what DDE is about.
So we just
when you do debt distress exchange,
so to
you are removing the debt commitment of 1.7 trillion off the books.
Okay, 1.7 trillion,
which is 80% of our revenue. What else do you need?
Then you are good.
That is yes. You're removing it.
Okay.
You're removing it. And with it, you give back. You stimulate by giving back. So you can give tax relief. Then it does not have to become punitive as what we are feeling about the finance bill.
Okay.
Yes, there is your revenue.
More people can spend.
There is your revenue.
All right. So on the other, what is the worst that can happen if, and you've seen this happening oftentimes, even companies in Kenya who have loans, what's the worst that can happen if you just look these guys in the eyes like this and tell them, guys, we are sorry. We know you gave us your money, but the reality on ground is that hatuna mbele wala nyuma. And you just have to let us go.
Are we a capitalist country?
Yes, we are a capitalist.
If I cannot maximize my profits, I will go find somewhere else.
So what if we just tell these guys we don't have money to pay?
If I cannot maximize my profits, if I cannot maximize my profits for the return that I am, my sweat, I will find another market. Why should I produce in Kenya?
Okay.
What is this obligation that you think we have to produce in Kenya? If anybody is here in production or in trade, they are here to maximize their profits.
Okay.
That's what capitalism is about.
All right.
Yeah, we're not a welfare state.
So you cannot run away.
No, no. If you make it punitive for me to produce, in other words, you are taking my sweat, and I'm not a beneficiary of my sweat. Why should I continue producing here? I will scale down my operations. I will go to another country.
You move on.
I'll move on.
So you mentioned something about SGR and the default that came in. What happened? It's 31 minutes past 9 a.m. You mentioned about SGR and the default that we had that has very serious consequences in terms of penalties. Now, most of the biggest debts that we have in the country have gone into capital projects, into projects. You can see them in either roads, you see them in the biggest one being SGR that you've spoken about several times. What did we just tell these guys? Of course, there have been conversations that we put some of our assets as collaterals, including the port. I don't know how true that is, because there's been no documentation that effect.
Gerald, before you go on, I'd like to correct you there.
Okay.
The biggest amount we are witnessing from a forensic audit that went to debt is on consumption, not capital projects.
Okay.
SGR as a total cost, Mombasa, Nairobi was probably about 400 billion.
Yes.
And Nairobi to Dukamoja was another 200. So that's about 600 billion.
Yes.
We have almost 1 trillion we have taken Eurobonds. Eurobonds from London Club that has not gone to any project. What has it funded? Show me the line item in the budget, in the appropriations bill development. So it went to consumption. You have the PS just on record.
Yeah.
You played him earlier, saying we are taking loans for consumption.
For counties.
So which development is he talking about funding?
Okay.
So I disagree with you.
Okay, you disagree with me. So, but cumulatively, don't you think cumulatively the money you've taken on these projects are not yielding back?
I cannot find it.
Okay,
you know, this is the point we're trying to make, that what Parliament passed was 2 trillion. Right? We took 6.
6 trillion, so an excess of 4
Or 4.
trillion.
We can't find the 4.
Yeah.
Because it's not tied to any project.
So what if we just say then the
It's
4?
not tied. So when you say, you see, this is the point I'm trying to make, that we've reached the end of our rope. Yeah? We've been borrowing to feed ourselves.
So you look left, right, still the same?
Yes.
Nothing.
We've been borrowing to feed ourselves.
Then don't you think then as Kenyans, we need to get to a point where we're saying we only know 2.3 trillion that was borrowed, that was approved by law. The other one, kama niwe ulipeana, sasa see where to get your money from. What is the consequence?
That is Odious. That is what I'm telling you. It was very successful in Mozambique. And it is an option.
Maybe.
It is an option. And it has harsh consequences. It has harsh consequences.
But we are better off with the
But you see, it will not affect all of us as 54 million Kenyans.
Okay.
And it's an option we should debate. It's definitely an option we should debate. But it means again that we are saying we are not going to pay. Just like the debt distress exchange, we are saying we cannot pay.
All right. There's a.
I remember saying from President Moi one time when he was pushed by the teachers' unions, and he said, "Hakuna pesa, hakuna pesa, hakuna pesa." That is really where we are. Hakuna pesa, hakuna pesa, hakuna pesa. We don't have it. We will never have it, so we must deal with this monster.
And
now.
they cannot promise you that you're going to have it. And even the Deputy President Rigiji has also said it. He told the governors that, our behinds are here. We don't have the money. If you want to whip us, you come and whip us. But we don't have money to give you. Maybe that's what we need to tell our creditors as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
We tell the Chinese, if you want to come and whip the 50 million of us, just come and whip us.
Correct.
No, we don't have money.
But what we need to do, because you'll find that the biggest chunk of that is domestic debt.
Okay.
Somehow is money.
So still comes
and money
back
for
to
consumption. And money for consumption. If we say, for example, that we are going to do a debt distress on our domestic debt, it means from the records it's showing like about 5 something trillion is domestic debt. It means, let's say we are cutting off 30%. Haircut. We're immediately saving 1.5 trillion.
Okay.
Immediately.
1.5 trillion.
1.5 trillion.
You are late about 1.5 trillion.
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you, Mheshimiwa Jimi, before I read the comments. It's not your first time here. Tulikuja wakati tumepiga siasa. You're not a new face in the scheme of things, as governance is. In 2013, you were severally mentioned as the man who was holding the engineering of Jubilee government as it was in 2013. Now, you've gone through 10 years of Jubilee, 5 years of William Ruto and Uhuru, 5 years of handshake. You've been in this political climate. These guys are not strangers to you. William Ruto is not a stranger to you. This nation, like you said, is a nation that all of us are trying to build. Have you picked up your phone and reached out to President William Ruto to give him these solutions? Have you tried it?
Gerald, you're right. the leadership of this country are not strangers to me.
Yes.
The previous president and the current president are good friends.
I'm glad you said good friends.
Yes, they were good, they were good friends, let me say. And yes, we had a lot to do with the union that you saw in 2013.
Yes.
I'd also like to say that Raila Amolo Odinga is also a good friend, has been a good friend. They are not strangers to me. That is correct. But on this economic issue, I am quite clear.
Okay.
You see, even though you have a friend, as William is,
A friend in it is a friend indeed.
you watch steps before you make comments. And I'd like to draw one parallel. In 2014, because this is about an economic policy,
Yes.
as I said earlier, a direction was taken by the drivers of the economy at the time. I said was demand-driven economics. Demand side. Spend, borrow and spend as being the catalyst for growth and development in the country. We have now reaped the so-called consequences of that decision.
Okay.
In 2014, who was the governor of Central Bank?
2013? I can't remember.
2014.
honestly. I can't remember.
Why?
I don't know. Let me try and jog my memory. 2014?
Yes.
Okay. I would have to go back to my Google.
Yes, please do.
Central Bank. 2014. Duncan Ndegwa?
No.
No. Let me see. 20 for Professor Njogunand. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Who was the governor?
Professor Njogunandongo from 2007 to 2015. All right. It's an interesting one.
And who was the PS in the treasury?
PS Treasury. Okay. So you've given Africa taken me through class today. 2014. Let me check. You cannot just help me and tell me who it was.
No, I'd like you to search.
Okay. Hey, okay. 2014. Bernard? Is it Bernard Ndongo?
2014.
I thought that
Bernard
was-
Dongo, there's never been a PS called Bernard Dongo.
Okay. Minister of...
PS Treasury 2014 was Dr. Kamau Thuge.
The same Kamau Thuge.
Yes.
Okay.
So today, who is the governor of Central Bank?
Njogunandongo. Thuge.
And who is in
The
Treasury?
CS, Ndongo.
So they've just swapped places.
Yes.
Fiscal and monetary policy. Monetary policy is CBK. Fiscal is Treasury. So 2014, a template was created by the same two proponents of demand-side economics. They were the drivers.
Oh, okay.
And 10 years later, there are two drivers in different positions. We're talking about policy, not personalities. Please understand, I have nothing against the two gentlemen. They are learned. In fact, one is even my neighbor. So I can tell you I have no issue with them. My issue is economic.
Policy.
They were the drivers of demand-side economics. So what my friend William is telling us is nothing has changed.
Okay.
Because they are not about to change the economic philosophy.
But then again,
nothing has changed. So what is there to discuss? You're saying
Yes,
advise.
solution.
No, advise what? But the template is already laid. The
Yes,
template, please understand me.
all right, I understand you.
You see, during the campaign, we went from bottom up to now we are going to demand side because those are the drivers of demand side economics, okay, that we have witnessed over the last 10 years, what has brought us to where we are.
Okay.
So what he announced to us is that nothing has changed. So he has taken a decision. And I'm saying I have a different policy decision, a different economic leaning to his. So he has decided he wants to go that way, to continue what has been there. I am a very different person.
But then again,
so on this, where are we meeting? You know, you see, what I'd like us to do is, it doesn't mean that we are not friends because we have a different view, economic view. I have a different economic view, a different economic policy. I'm a businessman. That's my training, that is my background. Biashara.
But don't you
right?
think
And I see things we have very different eye than probably he sees. Doesn't mean that we are not friends or that I'm critiquing his government.
Okay.
What I see is that we are continuing the same policies as we have over the last 10 years. And that is indicative of the drivers.
So why don't
Those
you
are
tell
the
them?
drivers. And I'm not criticizing them for any other reason than the fact that I don't agree with that policy. It has brought us to where we are.
So let me ask you, Mheshimiwa, if I'm your friend and we are driving in the same vehicle, because we are all in this vehicle called Kenya. Now we have this driver and we have you who was once a driver, wants to be a driver, you know, or has some knowledge on driving. If I'm driving badly and you're in this vehicle, we are all in this vehicle that is Kenya, and we are talking right now about a crisis that we have as a country. The economic crisis and debt crisis that we are discussing this morning. And part of the solutions that you're giving are the policy decisions that will change the direction of this nation as
Absolutely.
it is. So
That's my opinion.
If I'm your friend and I'm driving badly and you're in the same vehicle, you cannot tell me, oh, bro, I respect that you're on the steering wheel, but I have some advice. Maybe you need to drive on gear 3 because tuko kinungi.
You see
and the brakes are weak. Have you tried that?
No, listen, Gerald, I'm in full agreement with what you're saying.
Yes.
I disagree with your forum. You know, I think Kenya has reached a maturity level because, you know, for the first time in our history, I mean, we can sit here and start saying we have the wrong headlines.
Okay.
Because I don't think really people care about some of the things that the newspapers are writing these days. Okay? Kenyans are actually in a conversation of the economy.
Everybody's talking about the economy.
And I can tell you that is the beginning of major growth and understanding.
Okay.
We don't have to hide our opinions in rooms anymore and have tete-a-tetes, right? Let's bring them out in the open.
So
Let's debate them out in the open.
Okay.
And I'm coming out in the open. I'm saying what you're doing will not achieve for us.
Okay.
And I'm saying it openly. Right? If they believe they have a different policy, let them market their policy. You've had the PS talking.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, he's just telling me in many ways, right, that they're perpetuating delinquency. Because if you're going to break the law, then you're perpetuating delinquency. The law is clear. You cannot borrow for recurrent. You cannot borrow for counties. You're supposed to take it as a first charge of revenue. So what is going on here? You're already defaulting on that. Address it. Don't tell us you don't have a liquidity problem. You do. You do. You don't have the revenue to pay your counties. So what do? They are thinking the pancreas is the pill is to borrow more. And I'm saying that has landed us in these problems. The appeal is to address the debt and say we can't pay it because we have obligations in our constitution. We have to pay the county. We have got to pay pensions, right? So we have to squeeze you. We can't borrow for this. We've entered into some cycle that it's okay. It's not okay. Where we are today, we are at a crisis that could destroy generations of our lives. So let us discuss it openly. I'm prepared. I mean, the president was out openly, and he came out openly to discuss the finance bill, principally. Right? So he's discussing openly. Let us discuss these things openly.
Wherever you are, you just
and I
stand
can
and
assure
discuss
you,
it,
if he called me tomorrow and said, I want to have a discussion, I will give my opinion to him as I'm giving it here.
And
that opinion, right, is clear. And I would love this debated. I would love Kenyans to mull over. That's why I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible.
You're actually doing a good job in simplifying it.
So that you understand it to your own home, right? And nobody comes with complex economic terms, that lose people, right? Because this is what governs our life, right? If you have a buoyant economy, you have greatness that can come from us. You have less economic and social problems, right? It is our welfare. We create an agenda that is greater and bigger than what we are having today. You imagine, Gerald, 60 years after independence, the worry we have is the price of unga. Really? Is that even what our forefathers saw Kenya as?
We are an unga economy.
That after 60 years of independence, we are worrying about the price of unga, food. We are about food and the lack of it. I think we're in a tragic state. So something has gone wrong in all these years. And we must address it head on.
Okay.
And this is an opportunity. That's what I'm saying. That if we address this debt question, it's a great opportunity to reset Kenya, to reset us.
Okay. More reason, and I like the way you've brought that out very strongly. And you've said so rightfully that it's not only an issue that's affecting me and you. It is an issue that's even going to affect our generations. And you've given us a good backdrop on that, how we have actually gotten here and how we are continuing to kick the can down the road, you know. I'll kick it, I'll leave it somewhere, where kuja ungangana, ushika nae Jimmy, where you kick it down the road, we continue. So it means it can only get worse. More reason why, as every other person is asking, and I can read out the comments from you. Ken Ambula is saying, good morning, Gerald. Why can't Honorable Jimmy sit down with President Ruto and offer these solutions? I'm falling from Great Britain, UK. That is a Kenyan in the UK who is equally concerned. He's another country, but he understands how this crisis is. Willie Kamau says the President and Jimmy need to have a conversation. Huh? These are calls. These are calls from Kenyans who are listening to you, and they are realizing that, well, you are making sense of this and what can be done. And as a leader, all hands need to be on deck now. It's a crisis. It's like the ship is sinking. You're like every other person who has ever captained a ship somewhere. Just show up and maybe just touch something, whatever it is that you can touch and remove. Mheshimiwa, chukua simu, pigia rafiki yako, wanasema na ndugu yako William Ruto, ambia ndugu, hii meli unaendesha naona nimeanza kusikia maji inaingia ndani, ama Wakenya wanasema maji inaingia ndani, and this is what I think we can do. Are you able to do that for Kenyans?
You see, I have no problem talking to my good friend William. No, not in the least.
Okay.
But as I put it very clearly to you, he has stamped his direction.
Okay.
He has stamped
his direction.
His direction.
All right.
Okay. And I don't know what impact or otherwise it will make at this point. Sometimes, because I remember when I had this discussion with both of them in 2014 about this project called SGR. I said, this is not something for the taxpayer. this was envisaged to be done privately. This is a time for PPPs, not debt.
Okay.
I was told I am not the driver, and that they have chosen a path, and they went on a path that in many instances has brought us to where we are today.
Okay.
So he has stamped his direction. He has stamped his direction.
Okay. So we let him be.
They may feel they have a solution. I am saying they aren't. And I believe Gerald will be back here in a few months, yeah, with you saying, you are right.
Okay. All right. 52 minutes past 9 a.m. We finish in 4 minutes. Just look at the comments. Kennedy Cheg, yeah? One good show, informative, and Mr. Wanjigi explained it in a way that is easy to digest. The president and these people should learn a thing or two from this. Lundu K. Gisia from Tehran, from Tehran, Iran. Very interesting perspectives, Bwana Wanjigi. It makes reality hard to accept, lakini ni ukweli. Haya. Ras see Kefas Katimu N Kamau Thuge, the PS Kichungi Shugi. Some things cannot be said enough times. They ought to be repeated daily. All right. Samson Menja Mosoni, great show. Jimmy, Gerald and Jimmy should be the Minister of Finance, and he will be a future something at this rate. The clarity is great. All right. Asante. Daniel Korir, good to see you. Willie Kamau, the President Jimmy, need to have a conversation. David Oyola, good to see you. Mudemi Kiama, it's very interesting listening to our new foreign prophet on good governance. You conceived and executed Anglo-leasing across two regimes. I'm not sure about that, I think. I'll not be personally responsible for that.
It happens. It happens. It happens. You'll always get comments.
I'm not sure. The Dama Ezekiel Board podcast. Our local currency cannot support any substantial growth as of now. Our money has lost value. How do we gain value of our money back? Grow our foreign revenue, create a crisis where there is none to shape our spending as a people. Let's talk to our brother and sister abroad by giving them tax relief and tax cuts and send more money back home. Tax Kenyans working abroad, a small fee. Sasa ndio watakosa kutuma sasa ukweli. David Oyola, great talks, make him tie limo. Ask Wanjigi whether he thinks Baba has a solution since he knows him. On watu wako. Unaona Baba ni kama angetusaidia kidogo. You know Kenyans now believe
no. I think that's a very quick answer for me.
Yeah.
You see, we are talking about economic policy.
Yes.
And if you recall Baba's manifesto, it was welfare related. Mm-hmm. He was talking about giving people money.
6,000.
6,000. I don't believe that's a solution. So if that's the kind of economic policy he was going to pursue.
But money is coming back to us.
From where?
Chief from the government.
But it's not for 6,000 shillings. It is to stimulate production. So you don't give back 6,000 shillings. What you do is that you say, for example, look at the Madrid. Look at our electricity. Electricity is now 31 US cents per kilowatt hour. Right? 31 from 24. Right? It means you're saying, right? If you look at it, the component of tax is almost 60%.
Okay.
Right? We are now going to remove it or half it so that all of us have the benefit of cheaper electricity.
Okay.
That's what it means. That's giving back. It means saying we are not going to increase VAT on petroleum to the 16% because we are anticipating that fuel will now cost about 200 shillings. You're saying you're going to remove that and a myriad of other taxes in it so that we are more competitive, right? To do business. That's where you give back. I am saying you give back to the drivers of the economy, not as a welfare state, that you stay at home and you just enjoy some income, whether you sleep all day and others are sweating. That I don't believe in. I believe in everybody pulling their weight.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I think I've answered that, Gerald.
I think in short, you are saying without saying that you will not have given another solution.
Yes.
You are saying without saying. All right. Vidalis Levan, I think Jimmy ought to call the president and share his wisdom. I'm convinced the debt is the problem. And he actually said it. But the biggest problem that we have now is the debt. Okay. Willy Kamau, hakuna chabure. We are paying for the subsidies we ate in Uru's government. There is no free lunch. We must take matters economy into our hands. The problem is that we run away from the economic pain instead of facing it as a nation.
I would like to answer that one.
Please.
Because that's a good one. The estimated subsidies during the period being mentioned amount to probably about 200 billion.
Okay.
That it was on fuel, on electricity, and on unga. Now, so the subsidies were removed. So we have a saving of 200 billion. Correct?
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Why are you still coming to tax us? Are we on the same page?
That is enough to pay the
It's now, you see, we have 200 billion saving from subsidies, right? So that cushion has been removed.
Okay.
But now you come and bring more pain by taxing us again. Do you understand? So you remove our cushion and then you tax us.
Okay. So it means you should have more money.
Yes.
Okay.
The cushion has been removed. It tells you that we don't have the money.
So we need a 200 billion.
No, not only 200 billion. You now have come back to tax us more.
Okay.
I don't think you're getting me, Gerald.
I'm getting you. You're saying subsidies, 200 billion was removed from subsidies.
Think of yourself as an individual.
Yes.
So let's say you had a cost of 100 shillings, right? And the government was giving you 20 shillings rebate. So your actual cost was 80 shillings.
Okay.
Now they've removed it and said you're paying 100 shillings, right? Okay, so you've taken a hit,
No, I get it, yes.
right?
No, I get it, yeah.
But isitoshe, it then further comes and tells you, now on top of the 100, we are ongezing
Another
taxation.
So now it's 130.
So now it's 110.
Earlier I was paying 80 shillings.
I was paying 80 shillings.
So now I'm going to pay
Now I'm
110.
negative.
Wow, okay.
10.
I get it.
Yeah.
Haya. Willy Kamau, Willy Kamau, si dawa ya deni ni kulipa. There's no two way about it. Do we borrow Peter to pay Paul, or do we tell China, World Bank and IMF to give us more time because we have given our people tax cuts or have taken austerity measures? I disagree. You can't let the market determine anything freely. You plan and execute. We opt for a miracle where planning is needed. Enjoying the show. Okay. Ask Wanjigi how Uru's economic decisions are affecting William Ruto's presidency. As far as the economy is concerned, I think he has picked up on that as well. Ken Ambola, why can't Honorable Jimmy have a discourse with Honorable Ruto? A solution will be found through talking. And kweli, hata mimi niko hapo na sasa ni kama taongelesha wa Kenya tutengeneze twende State House tuwe storage yako. There's a question here from Charles, and I think it's a very critical question at this point. Charles Kwaj is asking, Ruto attended the Safina NDC, and it was said that they will work together after the elections. Are they working together now? Yes. Hi, mulituambia tukaona kwa TV.
You know, I don't know why people feel we are not working together or we are not talking.
No, they're just seeking clarification.
Because it's, no, this thing is you had the president talk on the weekend.
Yes.
And he said, ata kelele ya siasa is like a choir when a church is singing. Inasukuma the mood of worship. So even what I'm saying, please take note, I am talking about alternate economic policies, right, that I would have taken. I am aiding for those who are hearing. Yes.
You are preaching your gospel.
Absolutely.
Those who want to get saved
Absolutely.
should get saved.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for coming in. Exactly 10 minutes. Exactly 10 a.m. on top of the hour, 10:00. It's a pleasure having you. We've been here for 1 hour.
2 hours.
Actually, 2 hours exactly. Right? It's always a pleasure to have you. Of course.
Sana.
But even before you go, maybe you can give us the benefit of foresight. What do you see happening? We are now going to, of course, the truth is the finance bill is going to pass. That is the reality. Because if you look at the discourse and the conversations going on in Parliament, it's not promising anything different. You know?
I'll tell you categorically. Yeah. I hope I didn't cut you.
No, you can proceed.
Kenyans are going to go through more and more pain.
Okay.
And we are going to have this default discussion in the not too distant future.
Okay. That's what you're going to talk about.
Yes.
You're going to discuss default.
The country will be discussing nothing else but default in the not too distant future.
Yes. But don't you also think...
And I think it's important that Kenyans understand the gravity of that discussion, especially if it is initiated by others.
Okay. But also, don't you think President William Ruto is doing the right thing? Because I think this is the first time that the country, actually the whole country, is having a conversation about its debt responsibility and actually the state, the financial state of the nation.
I disagree with his method of addressing it through the finance bill and taxing us more. I completely disagree.
But at least finally we're having this conversation.
Yes.
Isn't it important? Also, if you're a farmer, I still want to remind you that kama ina mkulima, hakikisha kwamba unaweza kununua chakula ama bidhaa yako ya mifugo kutoka Fugo Feeds Unga Farm Care East Africa Limited. Please ensure that you can get your feeds there. This is what we are guaranteeing you of. One is a nutritional formulation that gives you a guarantee of not only benefits and profits in the market, but also the health and value of your animals. Appear the consumers are also very safe. If you're doing pigs, I've warned you several times. Stop letting your pigs roam around the villages, picking dirt and garbage, because they can get professional feeds from Fugo, Unga Farm Care East Africa Limited. If you're doing chicken as well, if you're doing layers, we are giving you a full complete layer meal from Fugo, Unga Farm Care East Africa Limited that ensures that your chicken have a good body growth rate and also gives you the best quality of eggs for the consumers as well. Yellow yolk from all your eggs that you're having. If you're also doing growers, the biggest profit that comes from doing grower chicken for meat is that when you get on the scale, it gives you the best value from the market. So please ensure that you can buy from all the certified distributors near you and ensure that it's only Fugo Feeds from Unga Farm Care Limited. Pale Fugo tunasema malezi bora, mapato zaidi. Malezi bora, mapato zaidi. This has been the State of the Nation edition, and we've been with Mheshimiwa Jimi Wanjigi. He was a presidential aspirant in 2022 and also a businessman. And that's why he has a good perspective of the economics. When you see him, it's about numbers and it's about the state of the nation. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for making the tackle the biggest conversation in Kenya and has continued to shape the decisions that are continued to be made. Mheshimiwa, your parting shot, your tackle of the day.
Thank you all for listening. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thanks for always coming in and for always making time for this conversation. Until tomorrow on Siaza Wednesday, this is the tackle and it ends now. Bye-bye.